Vietnam sits between the United States and China, not just on the map, but at the heart of the world's biggest power struggle. Once a battleground for both superpowers, Vietnam now receives investment and military support from each, turning what could have been a geopolitical curse into a source of leverage. To understand why both Washington and Beijing are competing for its favor, we need to look at what makes Vietnam essential in the broader struggle for influence. On the eastern edge of the Indo-Chinese Peninsula, Vietnam's coastline stretches over 3,200 kilometers across the South China Sea. This gives Vietnam direct access to some of the most contested maritime territory in the world, at the crossroads of global trade and regional security. The South China Sea is the world's busiest maritime trade route, handling roughly 30% of global shipping traffic. Nearly $5 trillion annually passes through these waters. This includes South Korean electronics, Taiwanese semiconductors, and everything China manufactures for Europe. And it's not just essential for shipping goods, it's critical to energy security. In addition to vast reserves of oil and natural gas beneath the seabed, Middle Eastern hydrocarbons flow through to support all the major Asian economies. The sea's fisheries also support millions of livelihoods, making it vital for food security across Asia. And for decades, China has been repeatedly expanding its territorial claims in the world's most important body of water. Central to this contest are the Paracel and Spratly Islands. The Paracels, occupied by China since 1974, and the Spratlys, where both China and Vietnam control multiple features each, are more than isolated outposts. China has invested heavily in militarizing these islands, building artificial land and fortifying them with runways, radar systems, and missile sites. While China has created over 4,600 acres of new land in the Spratlys, Vietnam has responded by reclaiming over 2,300 acres and rapidly expanding its own military infrastructure, harbors, surveillance stations, and defensive positions. For the US, Vietnam is a crucial partner in efforts to counterbalance China's growing assertiveness in the Indo-Pacific. Washington has deepened diplomatic, economic, and military ties with Hanoi, aiming to strengthen a coalition of states that can resist unilateral Chinese actions. But at the same time, Beijing seeks to draw Hanoi closer through economic integration and political dialogue, hoping to limit American influence and protect its own claims in the South China Sea. Both powers recognize that Vietnam's choices could tip the balance of power in the region. But Vietnam refuses to exclusively align itself with one superpower, instead maintaining a careful balance that maximizes its autonomy. The country's economic links with both China and the United States add another layer to its balancing act, shaping how it approaches trade, investment, and growth in a world defined by competition. In 2024, Vietnam posted a trade surplus with the United States of $123 billion, while its imports from China reached $144 billion. The US-China trade war has dramatically increased Vietnam's rise as a manufacturing center. When the first Trump and Biden administrations imposed tariffs on Chinese goods, multinational firms sought alternatives, and Vietnam became a preferred destination. Electronics exports surged from 14% of total exports in 2010 to 38% in 2022. Samsung now produces 40% of its phones in Vietnam, employing over 200,000 workers. And the country has attracted other major investments, like Lego's $1.3 billion factory. These developments have transformed Vietnam's industrial landscape and driven rapid economic growth, particularly in cities like Haiphong, where infrastructure projects such as a deep water port and expressway to Shenzhen have fueled expansion. But this economic windfall has come with complications. The sharp increase in Vietnamese exports to the US has closely mirrored a rise in imports from China, particularly in sectors affected by tariffs. US officials have raised concerns that Chinese companies are using Vietnam as a conduit to reroute goods and avoid tariffs, a pattern reflected in the matching spikes in both directions. Vietnamese authorities dispute any intentional facilitation, but the US would have an incredibly hard time enforcing these types of economic shell games. Vietnam's economy is among the most trade-intensive in the world. Its total trade in goods exceeds 185% of GDP, a level surpassed by few other countries. And foreign direct investment plays a central role in this dynamic. Since the 1990s, Vietnam has averaged FDI flows of 6% of GDP annually, twice the global average. In 2023, investors from 111 different countries contributed, with Singapore alone accounting for $6.9 billion. This capital has enabled Vietnam to develop critical infrastructure, modernize its export sectors, and position itself as a key node in global production networks. Despite this success, Vietnam's economic model has significant vulnerabilities. It is really dependent on China. To mitigate this, Vietnam has pursued free trade agreements with the European Union and Japan. But those are still small parts of their trade portfolio. It could be a decade or more before those relationships really blossom. In the meantime, Vietnam will have to stay on guard. Over a millennium of Chinese rule has left an indelible mark on Vietnam's national identity. Centuries of occupation and repeated invasions forged a culture of resistance, embedding a deep wariness of powerful neighbors into the Vietnamese worldview. In 1979, China launched a punitive invasion of northern Vietnam in response to Hanoi's intervention in Cambodia. The memory of that brief but consequential conflict remains vivid in political circles and public consciousness. Vietnam's approach to this challenge has been described as bamboo diplomacy. General Secretary Ninh Phu Trong captured this philosophy, describing it as soft and wise, but resolute. Like bamboo, Vietnam's foreign policy is flexible enough to bend under pressure, but strong enough to withstand attempts at domination. It means Vietnam welcomes Chinese investment and economic cooperation, but draws clear lines when it comes to sovereignty and security. Defense partnerships and joint exercises with the United States, Japan, and India are designed to counterbalance Chinese influence and reduce the risk of isolation in a crisis. As it jostles to reclaim land in the South China Sea, the most notable transformation has taken place at Bark Canada Reef, an outpost that has nearly doubled in size within months. The reef now stretches over 4,300 meters, creating potential for a 3,000-meter runway, comparable to China's major airstrips in the region. The reclaimed land allows for more extensive infrastructure, providing a logistical hub that can support sustained operations. This capability would enable Vietnam to project power further into disputed areas and maintain a more persistent presence, directly challenging the status quo established by China's earlier expansions. Nam Met Island now features a harbor and boat ramp supporting resupply and maintenance missions. Defensive structures such as trenches and emplacements have emerged at several strategic locations, reinforcing Vietnam's ability to withstand attack. A notable aspect of this buildup is the reaction, or lack thereof, from China. Despite Beijing's history of confronting other claimants, such as the Philippines, over similar activities, China has notably avoided direct contestation of Vietnam's recent reclamation work. This unusual restraint suggests a calculation on Beijing's part, possibly reflecting the complexity of its relationship with Hanoi, or fear of opening a new front of confrontation while already facing pushback elsewhere in the region. At its core, Vietnam's strategy is defensive. Maintain the status quo as long as possible to buy time for a diplomatic solution. The most notable evolution in Vietnam's foreign relations is its partnership with the United States. In September of 2023, the two countries elevated their relationship to a comprehensive strategic partnership, marking the highest level of cooperation in Hanoi's diplomatic hierarchy. For Vietnam, American support is tangible. Washington has transferred 24 Coast Guard cutters, patrol boats, and T-6 training aircraft, and has provided law enforcement training and maritime domain awareness support. The US also helped Vietnam establish a training center for fisheries resources surveillance. These measures directly enhance Vietnam's ability to monitor and defend its waters, giving Hanoi more leverage in its disputes with Beijing. Vietnam's no military alliances policy means that there is no security guarantee from the United States. However, Vietnam can accept assistance and technology transfers while simultaneously signaling to China that it is not entering an anti-Beijing alliance. The United States, for its part, respects these boundaries, understanding that Vietnam's value as a partner lies in its autonomy and credibility within Southeast Asia. Japan is another pillar of Vietnam's balancing act. Since 1992, Japan has provided official development assistance and loans that underpin major projects, such as Hanoi's urban railways, along with the construction of the Long Thanh International Airport. These projects are about integrating Vietnam into global supply chains and reducing their logistical dependence on China. Tokyo aims to offer Southeast Asia an alternative to China's Belt and Road Initiative with their Partnership for Quality Infrastructure. For Vietnam, the hope is to not only continue to diversify its trading partners, but to also get access to Japanese investment and technology. India's relationship with Vietnam has also deepened, particularly since the two countries established a comprehensive strategic partnership in 2016. India's Act East policy positions Vietnam as a core partner for regional stability and economic integration. And their defense relationship is particularly important. India gifted the missile frigate INS Kirpan to Vietnam and provided 12 high-speed patrol boats under a $100 million credit line, strengthening Vietnam's naval capabilities in contested waters. India has also committed to selling Akash air defense missiles, further enhancing Vietnam's deterrence posture. These transfers are not symbolic. They directly improve Vietnam's ability to monitor and defend its maritime interests. But the fact that they're even talking about it gives credence to the concept of Indo-Pacific strategy that was instigated by former Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe 2 decades ago. And rounding out Vietnam's global portfolio of partners is France, the first European Union country to elevate its ties with Vietnam to a comprehensive strategic partnership formalized in November 2023. France has offered training, technology transfers, and support for military modernization, helping Vietnam upgrade its capabilities without deepening dependence on any one country. All of these countries see how vital Vietnam is to winning in the South China Sea. Vietnam's nuanced approach to statecraft is benefiting the Vietnamese people and drawing on the nation's history of resistance and pragmatism. Every other small country caught between China and the United States should take note.